Alright everyone, welcome back to another episode of All the Mod 6. I hope everyone is doing great today. I know that I am as always. It's a very early morning recording for us here, so my voice might seem a little bit off, a little bit of a morning voice still. I do have some coffee to help me wake up a little bit more and get us through this episode. I hope you guys have some snacks or some drinks to carry you along through as well. Take a little bit of a sip here. So, what was I going to get into? Oh, yes. So, first and foremost, if those of you watching on day one, I hope that you have recuperated your sleep, at least for those of you stateside who recognize daylight savings time. Here in the States, for those of you who don't know, some areas go through a daylight savings time where in the fall, we fall back an hour, and then in the spring, we spring ahead an hour. Well, on Sunday, what was that? The March 14th, yes. We sprung ahead. So at 2 a.m., it switches to 3 a.m. I know it's a strange thing. If you want more knowledge on it, definitely do some Googling for it. For those of you who don't know more on it, because honestly, I can't justify, I don't have enough details to give you guys the lowdown of it in that great of depth. So, but feel free to look it up. But anyway, jumping into Minecraft today. So obviously we're back on our game save. Where else would we be today? We have done a little bit of work on stream and off camera, mostly on stream though. So I'm going to run you guys through a few things that we have done, and I'm actually going to run you through a process which we are going to be growing on as we progress a little bit more through our series. Now, I did this process on our stream because I was not 100% familiar with it, and it was a lot of different crafting and tinkering and things like that for the most part. So I just wanted to do that there, get some guidance from the community, and then show you guys here, so hopefully you could take some knowledge away from it as well, if you're not familiar with it. So, let's just get into it. Alright, so, first things first, we did craft up something pretty cool, especially if you are early-ish on in your playthrough of the game, which is the atomic disassembler from Mekanism. Now, this does take a little bit to get into, so it's not like super early. I definitely would suggest if you're getting into things early, go for silent gear and stuff along those lines. Super end game obviously is going to be your all the modium and things like that. The mining gadget is pretty comparable to this. I feel like the mining gadget's a little bit cooler, a little bit more feature packed than the atomic disassembler, but same idea is that it is a way for you to mine. So what we'll actually do, I'll show you guys, we'll head to the mine here, and I'll show you guys how this boy works. So, right off the bat, I should note actually, this does utilize power. We're actually going to switch songs here. Let's switch over songs. So this does utilize power, so obviously keep that in mind. You are going to need some power reserves for this, be it through a flux capacitor, right? Is that what the thermal is still? Let's go back to thermal. I believe that's what it is. I don't use it anymore because we have wireless charging for our devices, so we don't need that capacitor anymore. Is it not in here? What's going on? What's going on? Flux. There she be right there. The flux capacitor. Yeah, okay. But anyway, so it does take power. I should also show you real quick how this is crafted up so you guys are aware. It does take a vibranium ingot. My mistake, completely forgot it did take that. So, I don't know. It's kind of one half dozen to the other because I know that the mining gadget takes a very similar path as well. If we go to our mining gadget, unless they have changed it, mining, I think I have to look it up separately because I put stuff on ours. Wait, oh wait, if I could spell. There it is, okay. Actually, the mining gadget is way cheaper. So, mining gadget first, I kind of recommend it more. Anyway, regardless, I'm rambling on for no specific reason at all. But the atomic disassembler is pretty cool. It's a suggestion of a follower over on the stream. You might notice right off the bat in the lower left-hand corner, you have a few different items to note. So you have your mode and efficiency. The other thing that you can do, there are shortcuts for switching between different modes. But if you hold shift, I think it's shift, right? Shift, and you scroll on your scroll wheel on your mouse, you can see we can move back and forth between modes here. And it actually shows in the lower center as well. Or you can hold N, that's my shortcut for it, and you could switch between all the different modes as well. So you could turn everything off completely, and it just doesn't do anything, pretty much. I think this is more so if you're trying to save power, or if you don't want it to be charging up all the time, you could just turn it fully off. But obviously we're not going to do that. You have normal mode, which is going to make it act like a normal pickaxe, which is pretty fast. You have slow mode. I'm not really sure why you would want a slow mode, maybe to try to save power. We're going to scoot down here a little bit more to try to get away from the zombie. But it's not even really that slow, I would say. Moving along, we do have fast, which is actually pretty fast. Like, you can mine very, very quickly with this, but for us, we have our Aldemadium pick here, and it mines pretty similar in speed. So moving on from there with this, we also have vein mode, which is pretty much a built-in vein miner, ore miner, whatever you want to call it, which is really nice. Now, it only works on ores, unlike what you would normally have for vein miner, where you could use it on different blocks and things like that. So if we just, I'm not clicking the grave key, I'm not clicking any shortcuts. I'll put my hand up here. I got my other hand on my mouse here. And just like that, it takes out that whole vein of ore. Same like there. It has a really cool animation to it too, which is awesome. Don't know how it would work on certain computers. You know, adding in more animations can, be a little bit more tedious on certain computers. So it'd be interesting to actually see how that ultimately would span out. But that is the normal vein mode. And then there's also extended vein mining, which this then is like exact one-to-one for normal vein mine. So if we come in here, it will mine everything around it. So all of the dirt, all of this limestone, it just takes it all out. And then it still obviously works with the normal ores that you would encounter. So extended vein mining is pretty much, again, the one-to-one. And then obviously that does not take up any of your hunger. So this is a great way to utilize a vein miner without having to utilize up all of your hunger. Now for us, I'm pretty content with the items that we have, but I wanted to show you guys as another option if you wanted to get a tool up and going and you haven't already. So that was the first thing we did. It was actually pretty fun to get it up and going. We do need our sleeping bag here. I'm going to take a sip of coffee as we sleep the night away. And then we're going to jump into the big item for today. I'm actually going to put this away. So we actually spent a decent amount of time in Mekanism. If you didn't notice, that tool was actually from Mekanism. But we also further went into Mekanism with something that I've been wanting to do for quite some time now, and I've really been putting it off. But as our resources are starting to kind of dwindle a little bit in certain areas, if we take a look here in our refined storage system, we're only sitting at about 6K iron ingots, which I'm sure that to a lot of you, that's still quite a bit. But for me, it's too little. We're decreasing way too much there. We need to bump that up. So, if you guys recall, we did have a setup for ore duplication or processing, let's say. Ore duplication sounds like you're cheating, but it's a built-in feature, so it's not really cheating. It's just ore processing. So we had a setup over in our main temple area for that. Now, what I have gone ahead and done is I've actually moved that and expanded on it into our automated refined storage area here in our basement. So let's go down here and I'll show you guys what we got going on. So this is it right here. This is our ore processing site. Now this is just the second tier in the Mekanism ore processing. In the first one, we were pretty much just crushing up ores and smelting them up. So it was a 1-to-2 ratio. 1 ore equaled 2 ingots. Now this is a 1-to-3 ratio. So 1 ore equals 3 ingots in total. Now with Mekanism, you can actually get up to a total of 1-to-5 ratio, which is pretty cool. So 1 ore equals 5 ingots, but that is like, it's a lot to get to that point. And if you actually search on Google, you can find a bunch of like flow charts and layouts to explain how you get to that point. If you want to dive into it before we get there, definitely recommend it. Flowcharts are super, super helpful if you're a visual person. Like me, I'm a visual person. So we got this up and going on our stream. What we ultimately went with was all the ultimate tiers of the different machines. Now, if you aren't familiar with Mekanism, which I'm sure most of you are, but I'm going to briefly touch on this. There are different tiers of their machines. So very similar to like almost upgrading. You're just bumping up to the different tiers to get better efficiency or better attributes depending on what the machine may be. So for example, we have the basic smelting factory. So this bad boy, if we can get into it here. Well, okay, so first you start with the energized smelter. This is just like a powered furnace, right? And then you kind of move up through the tiers of it. So then you would upgrade this energized smelter to a basic smelting factory. This allows more ores to be processed, and it also offers better speed as well. And you could read through this little bit here. I guess you can't really read it behind my camera here, but you get the gist of it. So then you bump up through the different tiers. You go to the advanced, you go to the elite, and then finally the ultimate, which is the best tier that you can get. And then you can also put some upgrades on it, like speed upgrades, efficiency upgrades, energy upgrades, so on and so forth. So efficiency upgrades are only for certain machines. I'll get to that in a second. But yes, so, and then with that, obviously it takes different components to get up through those different levels. And those are all of these here. So you have different circuits, and then you also have different alloys. So you start basic, advanced, elite, and then ultimate, again, following the same exact tiering, and then pretty much the same idea for the alloys, just named differently. Now, it's a lot of crafting, and you do need to utilize a lot of the Mekanism machines to get to that high tier. So what I went ahead and did was actually get things set up within our refined storage automation so that we could automatically craft up a lot of these components that we need. So for example, we can craft up elite controllers, we can craft up ultimate control circuits, I should say. And these things aren't the easiest to make. Like if we look at the ultimate control, you need atomic alloys and you need elite controller circuits. The atomic alloy, well, you need to take a reinforced alloy with some refined obsidian and a metallurgic infuser. To get the refined alloy, it's diamond with the infused alloy in a metallurgic infuser. The infused alloy, redstone with iron and a metallurgic infuser. So I have it labeled here a little bit to help us move through that process. So you have redstone, diamond, and refined obsidian as the different additional attributes that you would put into the metallurgic infuser, along then with the different tiers. So this is how we have it set up over here. So first, we have a redstone one, and all of these are going to follow a very similar setup. So if you want to follow this for all of the tiers as well, feel free to. What we got here is just an iron crafter on top, because realistically, you're not going to be putting in a lot of recipes into this crafter, more than likely. So all I have in here is 2, but the iron one does offer a little bit better speed. You know, it is what it is. If you have enough for the netherite, which offers the best crafting speed, I'd recommend going with that. But if not, an iron one is going to do you just fine. So we have this in here with our patterns for what we want to craft up via refined storage. Underneath it, we have our advanced infusing factory. It's a good tier to go with, honestly, if you're going to go with one of them. Advanced is kind of just the middle ground for everything. So would recommend it, especially, again, mid-tier. So then we have it set up in here. This is what it'll look like. Obviously, it branches out into multiple different inputs with multiple different outputs. There's also auto sort, which is a really nice feature. Highly recommend doing it, because it'll distribute all of the inputs across all 5 input slots here. So instead of just having a whole stack stick right in this one and kind of work its way through that stack one by one, it'll distribute all of that stack across these 5 here and then simultaneously craft through them or process through them. Now, obviously, you can see down here, this is the redstone one. So we have redstone in our additional slot here. And in order to get this set up, it's a little bit tricky. And that's why we have different tiers for different crafting recipes. So this needs to get pumped into here, and it kind of backlogs it as well, especially in the automation side of things. This is the best, I feel like this is the best way to go about it. Now, if you are only using one machine for all these different ones, what you would end up having to do is put the correct amount of redstone in on your own, have it get up to that point, craft up what you wanted, and then if you were moving to the next tier, let's say that use diamond, you would have to dump out any extra you had here, put your diamond in here, and then process through it. When you're automating it, it's a little bit harder because you can't do that. You can't just dump it and then have it reprocess. It's a little bit more tricky. So what we have going here then to make sure that this is running properly is obviously an importer, which is taking any of the outputs and importing them back into our system. And then we also have an exporter on the side, which is exporting redstone into the machine. Now, obviously, make sure your configuration is set up properly. For us, I actually don't have this one set up properly, but it still runs. Sometimes it'll be fine with it. So input on the top, obviously from the crafter down, output on the bottom back into our system, and then additional extra component input from our right hand side where we have our exporter pumping in redstone. Now this is going to be the same setup for all of these, so our diamond one is going to be similar. Now this does take enriched diamond. Enriched diamond is a way that you have to process through it. So you take diamond in an enrichment chamber and you get enriched diamond that you can use. You can't just use normal diamond for this process. So what we have it set up with is a actual crafting upgrade within our exporter, and then just the enriched diamond item right here. So basically, craft up this, and then I'll show you real quick how you can do this. All you gotta do is drag from JEI and drop. Very, very straightforward. So this allows this to be filled with this, and then it's also with the crafting upgrade, so it knows over here in another enriching factory that we have going, hey, that other thing needs to have these enriched diamonds going, start crafting them up and pumping them over to that location. And it'll just keep doing it. Now, that is kind of the catch. Obviously, you want to have enough resources. You don't want to be running yourself dry, having it just continuously run. So keep it in mind. For us, it works fine, especially because it'll only do the backlog and then it will just hold 64, one singular stack in this input slot here, which is really... it's nice. I think it works, especially if you have the resources for it. Now, very similar with the obsidian one, this takes enriched obsidian to do. In order to get enriched obsidian, you need refined obsidian dust, which you need to get from taking obsidian dust and mixing it with diamond dust in a metallurgic infuser. And obsidian dust is made from just crushing up normal obsidian in an enrichment chamber. So very similar. I have the enriched obsidian item over here. Again, all you got to do is just drag and drop. Make sure you have the crafting upgrade so it knows to say to the rest of the system, hey, craft it up and export it to this location. Coming back over here, we have this stuff all set up. So we have the input of obsidian here, of the obsidian, input of 1 obsidian, output of 4 obsidian dust, so it knows to craft up the obsidian dust. And then very similarly, the 1 refined obsidian dust and the 1 enriched obsidian. And I think we have the obsidian dust somewhere over here, back over in our advanced infusing factory. So it knows to take the obsidian dust, put it over here, enriched obsidian dust, send it back over here, make it the refined or the enriched obsidian. So kind of makes sense. Anywho, so yeah, 3 different ones for the 3 different tiers that you move through. I think it's the most efficient. The other thing I would definitely recommend is getting some upgrades on these so that they run a bit quicker, which actually, why don't we do it right now? Because I do need to put some on these bad boys. So each one will take 8 of the respective ones. So there's speed and energy. I highly recommend just doing both of them if you have the resources for it. And I like to bump them all the way up to the top tier since we do have enough resources for it. So we are going to get, because we have 3 machines, 8, 16, 24, right? So we need 24 speed upgrades. We're just going to let it go on its own. And then on top of that, we are also going to need a couple of energy upgrades. Just like so. So we'll get those going and it'll start crafting it up really easily for us. I believe, does this already have upgrades on it? Ah, this already does, actually. So our first tier already had it. But we can throw it on these last 2 tiers, and then we'll have a few left over, which is perfectly fine. No big deal. So we can actually grab these, and they actually only stack in sets of 8. Within your system, obviously, they'll stack more than that. But when you actually pull them out, they will only be in stacks of 8. So we can come in here, go to our upgrades, and this actually already, oh, this one already has 8 of 8 on it. Did I already put it on this one? No, this is the one I don't. So we're actually gonna have a few extra. So all you gotta do is throw them in here, and they'll start kind of, you know, attributing themselves to the machine. And you can actually click on here and see what is being bumped up. So you're bumping up the speed. And like I said, you can go up to 8 times, or 8 of these in here. So it's going to be very, very quick. So 256 times effectiveness, which is really awesome. We can put the energy upgrades in here, because if you increase the speed, it's going to suck more power from the machine. Skip this song. It's going to suck more power from the machine. And if your machine isn't getting enough power to keep up with it, the energy backlog will definitely be extremely useful for you. So with the energy, obviously now we're at times 10. It's holding about 200,000 RF, which is really nice. That's a good amount to be held in there. Now also here, you can also see what machines support what upgrades. I'm sure many of you already know this. Most of the crafting machines are only going to take speed, energy, and muffling. However, trick for you in this pack, if you are wanting to muffle some of your machines, if you go onto your items, into your inventory here, you go to the muffler, you can actually go through here and muffle the sounds from certain machines. So you don't even have to put a muffler on there. And that's what we have here. So I have muffled all of our mechanism items here, so we're not hearing a bunch of sounds. All right. So I've definitely rambled for quite some time on just the automated process. Let's actually get into the duplication, and then I'm going to kick my camera here and wobble it a little bit. Now we're going to then go to the other, get some ores, and I'm going to show you how the process goes through and works, and I'll let you know kind of what our next steps are from there. So our process here is pretty straightforward. Like I said earlier on, our original one was pretty much just taking, I think it was an enrichment chamber, and then, yeah, an enrichment chamber or enriching factory like we have here, which will take the ores like so, turn them into dust, and then take them into our smelting factory and make ingots. So it's pretty much just these two machines before. Now, in order to get it times 3, it's a little bit longer of a process. So in terms of like our normal machines where the ores go through it, you pretty much start with you start with a purifying factory here. So this is where we start off at. Now what this will do is it'll take the ore, it'll combine it with some oxygen here, and it'll make clumps. These clumps will be thrown into the crushing factory, which will crush them up, and then it'll be enriched, and then it'll be smelted up. So, and that went really quick because we have a ton of upgrades on it. So I'll show you really quickly how we go through it based on JEI, because obviously then we can click through it a little bit better. So here we go. Basically what we're doing is taking a purification chamber with some oxygen, and it's getting us the clumps. These clumps can then be used in our crusher to get dirty dust. Insert ore that you are choosing dust. This dust then has to be thrown through the enrichment chamber to make it pure dust. And then this can just be smelted up in any various way that you want to. Obviously, we stuck with Mekanism. So pretty straightforward. You are getting 3 output because you're starting right here with getting 3 clumps. That is then being refined all the way through till the end to get those 3 ingot outputs. Now, the trick with this is getting the oxygen that you need in order to do the first step here. So what we have going on the back side of this is a sink with an electrolytic separator, again from Mekanism. Now what this will do is it'll input it, well, for our case scenario, it'll input water, and then this water will actually be separated into oxygen, as well as, I believe, let me pull it up here. I think it's hydrogen, if I'm not mistaken. I really should know this offhand. Let's get this going here. So you can take water and you'll get hydrogen and oxygen. You'll actually get 2 buckets of hydrogen and 1 bucket of oxygen, which is pretty nice. So and it only takes 2 buckets of water. So it goes from 2 water to 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen. Makes sense. That's water. H2O. Anywho, so all we need for this step is oxygen. So what we have it going on is it's taking the oxygen that's being produced from this and sending it over to our purifying factory here, our purifier. Now, with this, you do need to set it up properly. And there are a couple different tabs for setting things up that may not be super recognizable if you are used to the other machines. It's a little bit different. So the first one it loads you into is the item config. You don't need to worry about this one. Just skip it. You want to worry about gases. So this is where you configure where your gas is going to output. Oxygen obviously is a gas, and you would want to output it in the correct direction. Now there is output 1 and output 2 when you go through these. For us, it's the cyan output 2 that we want. Moving right along, you also have the fluids tab, which would be for your input of water. So that's where your water goes into. Again, pretty straightforward for that. Then finally, you have energy for where your energy is coming from. And we have it set up as well. Typically, energy is pretty laissez-faire. It's not super picky on it. It's just more so picky on everything else. Now, there's also another thing to consider in here. When this goes through the process, and you have it set up like this, it does produce hydrogen by default and the oxygen. Well, if it gets full on the hydrogen, it is not going to keep running just to produce oxygen. Doesn't work that way. So in order to fix this, by default, this is on idle. And both of these are on idle. So this is for your output 1. This is for your output 2. So what ends up happening is it goes through, it'll produce it all up. And then once this is filled up, and if it's not being transported out, it will stop the process completely. So what you want to do is just change this to be dumping. Now you could be dumping excess, so you'll at least have the backlog of it here. But for us, I just dumped it in general. Now, as we move to the next stage of this setup, we're going to need that hydrogen, so we actually are going to switch it. But for this specific one, that's what you want to do. Make sure this is on dumping, so you're not having any of that hydrogen backlog. And then we have a good amount of oxygen in here. Now, I'm sure some of you who are more knowledgeable with this setup probably realize right off the bat, hey, you don't need that pressurized tube between your two machines. You could just have them back to back. That is correct. However, if you take a look at the pressurized tube, wow, if I could spell. There we go. The elite pressurized tube, and we could even go up to the next tier, but the elite pressurized tube has an awesome pump rate for one. It does 128 buckets per tick. But on top of that, it also holds a capacity. So it holds a backlog of whatever is being pushed through it. So for this case scenario, it's backlogging 1,000 buckets of oxygen. Buckets. It's a very weird unit of measurement for a gas. But it is what it is. So, and you can also like hold shift to see that it's 4 gases, but anyway. So the reason that I'm doing this is so that it backlogs 1,000 buckets of the oxygen. So when we have a high demanding input of ores here, it has a good backlog to be pulling from in order to be processing all of what we need. Because otherwise, all you're dealing with are this less than 2 buckets of oxygen in here, and this not even 2.5 buckets of oxygen in here. So that, oh, it's raining. So that's why I recommend having something in between, be it that or be it pumping into another, oh, I can't sleep because it's daytime, or have it pumping into another sort of storage system. Let me go sleep the day away and get this rain gone, and then we'll continue on. I'll show you guys how it works. All right, guys, so I did go ahead, I slept the day away, and I went to the other dimension here to get some ores so that we could run them through the process. As you can see, I picked up quite a bit. If you guys are not familiar, those of you new here who haven't caught previous videos, the other dimension has some great output rate on ores. I highly would recommend getting to it. It is a little bit more difficult though. There are dragons there and other harder to kill mobs, so, and the ores are harder to mine themselves. So, but it's a great place to get a lot of output from ores. Anyway, we're not worrying about that today. So I'm going to take a bite of our bacon cheeseburger here. We are up to quite a bit of them as well, actually. If we take a look here, we're almost at 6.6K bacon cheeseburgers, which is awesome. So anywho, we have enough to go through the process. Now you guys may notice we do have an ender chest here. That is so I can use my ender bag and just throw them into our ender bag and then have them automatically transport to here. So I'll show you how it works then real quick with this. So I'm just going to take a bunch of this nickel, throw it through, and as you can see, it goes through extremely quick. With the whole entire process that we have set up, it is done. It's done. It took all 10 of those and we got an output of 30 more. Now we can see how it handles when we throw in what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, almost 9 stacks of iron. So let's see real quick though what that would turn out to be. If we go to our calculator here, we got 9 stacks roughly times 64. This is obviously rough information here. So that should be 576 times 3 is about 1,700. About 1,700 iron ingots just from this going through this process. So we're going to throw all of these in here. As you can see, they move extremely quickly. They've all been put into here, all outputting already, all going through this process. Yeah, it's just a continuous process of moving through this. Now, the only thing that you might run into is this crushing factory keeping up with everything. This is probably going to be the hardest one because this one outputs in 3s, and then this is only doing it can only hold up to a stack in each slot. So realistically, this is going to get a point where it already has started to get where it's backlogging a lot of the clumps in the purifying chamber. So really, your best bet actually would be to have a couple of these crushing factories going so that it could distribute to all 3. It could distribute equally and actually keep up with the process. But so far, so good. Our oxygen is also keeping up. I'm guessing that this is running as well. It is, and it is actually keeping up with everything, which is perfect. Now, the other thing I actually do want to mention is with the ultimate purifying factory, or the purifier in general, it does have an additional upgrade that you can get for it because it does utilize gas, which is the efficiency upgrade. So, or the gas upgrade, I should say. This bumps up the amount of efficiency that is that this machine has when it is using whatever gas it is using. In our case scenario, it is oxygen. So it's 10 times more effective, and you can get up to 8 of these on there. So that is what we did, and so it's going to be a super effective when going through this. Now, it is funny, it has kind of gotten a little bit of a backlog going here, but it's going through the process just fine, and it's keeping up. Again, I think probably what I'll do is actually bump these out. I might actually have a couple more ultimate crushing factories going here so that it can take the 3 that are coming from this and distribute them out to all 3. But I also do need to look at what our next steps are for getting the tier, what is this? Because this is tier 1 is that, tier 2 is this, and then tier 3. So looking at what would be tier 3, which would be quadrupling our ore output instead of just tripling it. So, but anyways, guys, we have run over time here. I know this was a little bit more of a talkative episode, very focused around Mekanism, but I hope you guys did enjoy. I think in the next one, we might jump back into bees. We'll have to see how it goes. I was a little bit disappointed at the end of the last episode with how our bees were going, so we'll kind of just vibe it out. But anyways, if you did enjoy this episode, definitely leave a like down below. Better yet, leave a comment. Love to know what you guys are thinking here. If you are new here, you do want to follow along, definitely hit the subscribe button and bell notification. Let you know every single time a new episode is posted here on the channel. I do stream over on Twitch, like I mentioned before, Mondays and Fridays at about 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That link is in the description down below, along with a link to the Discord. If you feel like joining in the community, definitely recommend it. A bunch of cool people over there. But anyways, thank you so much for tuning in today. Thanks for hanging out with me. Appreciate it so very much, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take it easy.